Hey there, it's David H. Lawrence, the 17th, and you'll never guess what happened. I ran into that lady that I occasionally run into, the one that walks her dogs, but that the other day I mentioned in one of the other videos, just happened to be carrying a pretty good microphone and a pop filter in the elevator when we got up to right up to the first floor together. If you hadn't seen the video, I was just a little shocked that she said it so matter of factly. I said, "So you're going to interview somebody?" Just kind of be funny. And she goes, "No, I'm a podcaster." Actually, she didn't say that. She goes, "I do a podcast." She didn't say I'm a podcaster. And I know now why. So I was driving out of the garage to go run an errand, and she was walking her dog back in. And I didn't have to be anywhere real fast. So I rolled my window down and, if you got to be somewhere fast, don't roll your window down and talk to a neighbor who carries a mic with her because you might be there for a while. I wasn't, but I could have been. So I rolled my window down. And I said, "Hey, how are you?" And she goes, "Fine." I said, "I was just wondering, you just casually mentioned that you were doing a podcast the other day. What kind of podcast do you do? What podcast do you do?" And, I thought she would say, I do a podcast on dog walking or on poodles or whatever. She's like, "Oh, well, I used to be a broadcaster. I used to be in radio. I used to work for a big name company, Premier Broadcasting, Clear Channel, etc." And she said it to me because she didn't know that I was a broadcaster. She said it to me as though she was explaining to me, this is a big time thing. I'm not just a podcaster like other people, which I thought was really cute. But she's got chops. She's been a broadcaster for a long time. And she told me that her podcast was called Run Like a Girl. And it was about political activism and all of the women that have been running for the last couple of years in response to what's going on with our government these days and what's going on between the two parties. And so I said, "Well, what's your background? Where'd you learn how to podcast?" She goes, "Oh, I was a broadcaster, a radio broadcaster for decades." And she worked for she worked for Dr. Laura's show. She worked for Premier Broadcasting, the syndicator. She also worked for ABC. We found out we both worked for ABC. I had a chat with her about it. And, there's a part of me that really doesn't want to get to know my neighbors all that well. But she seemed like a nice enough person, and she seemed like she would understand why I kind of like my privacy. But it was really interesting to see that she wasn't defining herself as a podcaster. She was defining herself as a broadcaster who agreed with me that broadcasting is now, radio in particular, is just a cesspool of an industry to be in. And she also said she's working on a new podcast, again, in the realm of political activism, about a prisoner in a facility in Northern California who's maintaining his innocence. And she's thinking of trying to turn it into sort of like an Adnan Syed kind of, did this person really do what they say they did? So it's really interesting. You walk by people every single day. And you know how we said in one of the other videos, don't judge a book by its cover? You just don't ever know. You never know what people are capable of doing. And so you might walk by people all the time that, remember we talked about biases. I keep referring to other videos in this one. I don't know why. But we talk about biases and how we look at people and we size them up. You don't know. You never know. And if there's a great example of that, if there ever was, it's me. People who look at me, they don't think I'm an actor. They never thought I was an air personality. I would have people say to me all the time, sort of a watchword in my life, "I didn't know you did that. I didn't know you could do that. I had no idea that," and what they were saying was, "I look at you, you look like a plumber. You don't look like somebody who would do the kinds of things that you do." So it's really interesting how our biases sometimes creep in, and mine certainly did. When we rode up in the elevator together, I thought she was delivering the microphone to somebody professional. But it turns out she was the professional. So there you go, David. Anybody ever done that to you? Anybody ever surprised you when you looked at them? I wonder what your first impression is when you looked at me. When you first met me, when you first Googled me or you first searched for me, or you first saw one of these videos, I wonder what your first impressions were. And I wonder what first impressions are like for you with other people. What do they say to you? Let me know all this stuff in the comments below. Your biases, what you thought, what your first impressions were, back and forth. It's fascinating to me, all this stuff. It really is. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, go ahead and click on my head over there. If there's no head over there, there's a subscribe button somewhere on the page that you're watching this. If you want to see the latest episode that I've put out, that frame, you click on that and YouTube will play it for you. Boy, they're good at that. If you see a frame. I'm David H. Lawrence the 17th. I thank you so much for watching these daily videos, and I will talk to you tomorrow.